The city looked less like a place where people once lived, and more like the aftermath of a storm that had never passed. Buildings stood hollow, their facades scarred by years of fighting. Windows were shattered, doors hung loose on broken hinges, and entire blocks carried the charred skeletons of homes that had once been filled with laughter and family meals. Now only the wind moved freely, whispering through the alleys as if mocking the silence that had replaced the voices of the living. A squad of Marines moved cautiously down one of those lifeless streets, their boots crunching against broken glass and loose gravel. Each step echoed, bouncing off concrete walls and empty shops, magnifying their presence in a way that made every man uneasy. Their uniforms, dusted with the grime of weeks in hostile territory, blended into the gray landscape, but they felt exposed all the same. Every pair of eyes scanned rooftops, windows, and shadowed corners, searching for the danger they were certain lurked nearby. Sergeant Cole, a veteran of more firefights than he cared to remember, led them with the calm efficiency of a man who had survived too many ambushes. His rifle was tight against his shoulder, his gaze sharp, his jaw clenched. He didn't like this street. It was too quiet, too empty, too staged. In his experience, war rarely left space for peace. If there was silence, it was because the enemy wanted it that way. "Eyes up," Cole muttered, his voice just above a whisper. The squad obeyed instantly, rifles rising, muzzles sweeping rooftops as they advanced. Private Ramirez, the youngest of the group, and barely 20, swallowed hard. His first deployment had already shown him enough horror to last a lifetime, but what unnerved him most was the waiting. It wasn't the firefights that broke him. It was the slow crawl through streets like this, where danger breathed just beyond sight. He gripped his weapon tighter, his knuckles pale beneath his gloves. "Where's the backup?" Corporal Hayes whispered, his voice carrying the frustration that everyone felt, but no one wanted to admit. The words seemed to linger in the air longer than they should have. Reinforcements had been promised. Another squad was supposed to rendezvous with them before they pushed deeper into the industrial district. But the rendezvous point had come and gone, and now they were advancing alone into what felt like a trap. Radio contact had been spotty all day. Static had eaten most of their transmissions, and when words did come through, they were chopped and incomplete. For all Cole knew, their backup was lost, delayed, or worse. Cole didn't answer Hayes. Instead, he raised a hand, signaling the squad to halt. They pressed against the walls of nearby buildings, taking cover in doorways and behind burned-out cars. Cole scanned the skyline. The factory district was ahead, its tall smokestacks jutting against the horizon like broken teeth. The closer they got, the more suffocating the silence became. A tattered billboard still clung to life above the street. Its faded paint advertised some pre-war product, a smiling family frozen in a world that no longer existed. Beneath it, stray dogs darted across the road, their paws silent against the cracked asphalt. The Marines tensed, rifles rising, but the animals vanished as quickly as they appeared, slipping into the ruins without a sound. "Christ," muttered Lance Corporal Doyle, adjusting his helmet. "Even the damned dogs look like ghosts." "Quiet," Cole snapped. He didn't need chatter now. He needed ears sharp enough to catch the faintest sound of trouble. They advanced again, slower this time. Every shadow seemed to move. Every rooftop felt like it had eyes. The Marines' boots sank into puddles of stagnant water, sending ripples across surfaces coated with ash and debris. Somewhere in the distance, metal clattered, maybe a loose shutter caught in the wind, maybe something more. The squad froze, rifles aimed in unison, but the sound faded into nothing. Ramirez's breathing quickened. He tried to steady it, but the city felt like it was pressing in on him. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with unseen weight, like the pause before a storm. He glanced at Hayes, who caught his eye and gave a quick nod, a silent reassurance. Still, the question gnawed at both of them. Where was the backup? Cole signaled again, directing the squad toward a row of gutted storefronts. They moved with practiced precision, covering one another as they advanced. Glass crunched underfoot, louder than gunfire in the stillness. Inside one shop, a collapsed ceiling revealed beams dangling like broken ribs. Dust drifted lazily through the air, stirred by their movement. Ramirez caught sight of a child's toy half buried in the rubble, a plastic soldier, its arm missing, its face smeared with dirt. The sight twisted his stomach. Hayes crouched beside him, keeping his rifle steady as he whispered, "Keep your head straight, kid. Focus." Ramirez nodded, forcing his eyes back to the dark windows across the street. But the toy stayed in his mind, an unshakable reminder of who had once lived here and what had been lost. Up ahead, Cole stopped again. His instincts screamed at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being funneled, herded down this path. He had seen insurgents set traps like this, before lure a squad into a choke point, let their guard drop, then unleash hell. His jaw tightened. Backup or no backup, they had no choice but to push forward. The mission demanded it. Still, he couldn't ignore the whispers among his men. The phrase, "Where's the backup?" kept surfacing, passed from one Marine to another like a secret prayer. It wasn't just impatience. It was fear, raw and unfiltered, hiding in their voices. The street narrowed as they approached the factory gates. A burned-out truck blocked part of the road, its frame twisted, tires melted into black pools. Cole ordered 2 Marines to sweep around it. They moved cautiously, rifles raised, their shadows long in the fading light. Suddenly, the wind shifted, carrying with it the faintest scent of gunpowder. Cole caught it instantly. His gut clenched. Someone had been here recently. He raised his fist, signaling the squad to freeze. Every Marine obeyed without hesitation, pressing into cover, eyes scanning the factory ahead. The building stood like a fortress, its shattered windows black against the gray sky. The silence was unbearable now, so thick it pressed against their ears. Ramirez's heart pounded as he whispered, almost to himself, "Where's the backup?" But this time, no one answered. The factory loomed closer, its broken doors yawning open like the mouth of a predator. And though none of the Marines could see it yet, something or someone was already watching them from inside. The abandoned factory loomed over the Marines like a monument to a dead age. Its smokestacks pierced the sky, tall and lifeless, the red brick around their bases darkened by decades of soot and more recent scars from mortar fire. Entire sections of the roof had collapsed, leaving jagged gaps where sunlight bled through in dull beams, illuminating drifting clouds of dust. To Sergeant Cole, it looked less like a building and more like a grave. Factories were supposed to echo with noise machines, grinding, workers shouting, steel hissing under fire. This one had been stripped of all that life. In its place was silence, and silence was more terrifying than chaos. The squad fanned out around the perimeter, rifles raised, eyes sharp. Private Ramirez felt a chill crawl down his spine as he stared at the shattered windows. They looked like dozens of dark eyes watching him. For a moment, he could swear he saw movement, a shadow slipping past an upper floor, but when he blinked, it was gone. "Place is giving me the creeps," muttered Doyle, his voice hushed. "Stay focused," Cole snapped. "Eyes on the glass, not your nerves." But Cole couldn't deny he felt the same unease. His instincts screamed at him that they weren't alone, that the factory wasn't as empty as it appeared. He had fought enough urban battles to know. The worst ambush came from buildings like this. The Marines crouched low against the crumbling outer walls, their bodies pressed to the cold brick. Paint peeled away in long strips, and rust streaks bled down from broken pipes like dried wounds. The smell of oil still lingered faintly in the air, mixed with dust and decay. Corporal Hayes keyed his radio, static filling his headset. "Command, this is Alpha Squad at Checkpoint 3. No sign of reinforcements. Repeat, no sign of backup. Moving to secure factory perimeter." Only static answered. Hayes cursed under his breath. "Radios are shot again," he muttered. Cole gritted his teeth. That made them blind and deaf. If trouble came, and he was certain it would, they couldn't count on support. Still, retreat wasn't an option. Their orders were to secure this sector, backup or no backup. He motioned with his hand, and the squad began their slow crawl around the building. Their boots shifted through debris scraps of metal, broken glass, bits of concrete. Every sound felt amplified in the oppressive silence. Ramirez couldn't shake the feeling that the factory was breathing, watching, waiting. His imagination painted ghosts into every shadow. Factory workers long dead, insurgents crouched in corners, eyes tracking his every move. He tried to shake it off, focusing instead on his training step: scan, breathe. Step, scan, breathe. A sudden noise cut through the stillness. The metallic groan of a door, swinging on broken hinges. The Marines froze, rifles snapping toward the sound. It had come from one of the loading bays, where the heavy steel door hung crooked, half torn from its track. The wind pushed it slowly, making it creak with a long, painful cry. "It's just the wind," Doyle whispered, though his voice betrayed doubt. "Or not," Hayes countered. Cole didn't like it. Every instinct screamed this was bait, but he forced his men forward. They stacked near the loading bay, pressing their backs to the wall. Cole signaled 2 Marines to push inside while the rest covered them. The bay smelled of mildew and ash. Broken pallets and rusted barrels littered the floor, casting long shadows in the dim light. A once busy workspace now felt like a mausoleum. The Marines swept through it with rifles raised, but found nothing but rats scurrying over piles of trash. "Clear," one of them called softly. Cole entered, scanning the wide open space. The factory was enormous, its floor divided by rusted machinery and conveyor belts coated in grime. Sunlight filtered weakly through holes in the ceiling, making beams of light that caught drifting dust. Every step echoed, bouncing against metal beams and cavernous walls. "Ghost town," Doyle muttered, his voice low. Ramirez felt a chill at the words. Ghosts. That's exactly what it felt like they were walking, through the remnants of lives snuffed out, their presence lingering. A pair of old work boots sat abandoned near a machine, their leather cracked, their owner long gone. On a wall, a faded calendar still hung, frozen years in the past, its pages yellowed and curling. And yet, for all its emptiness, the factory didn't feel deserted. It felt occupied by something unseen. Cole raised his fist again, halting the squad. He had seen it, the faintest shimmer of light from an upper window, too deliberate to be a trick of the sun. He scanned the rafters, his heart pounding. Someone was here. Eyes sharp, he whispered. "We're not alone." The Marines tightened their formation, rifles sweeping the shadows. Their breaths sounded too loud, their hearts beating like drums. Then came the sound again, metal on metal, faint but distinct. It echoed through the factory, bouncing off the walls, making it impossible to pinpoint the source. The squad shifted nervously, scanning every corner, every beam. "That's not the wind," Hayes whispered, his voice tight. Ramirez's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his grip on his rifle. He felt exposed, like a target painted on his chest. His eyes darted to the shattered windows above, searching for the glint of glass, the shimmer of movement. But the shadows remained still. The factory swallowed them whole, its silence a living thing pressing against their ears. "Where's the backup?" Someone whispered again, barely audible. This time, the words weren't just frustration. They were fear given voice. Cole clenched his jaw. Backup wasn't coming, he realized. Not now, maybe not ever. They were on their own, and whatever waited inside this factory was already watching them. He raised his hand, signaling the squad to move deeper inside. The Marines obeyed reluctantly, their boots echoing against the metal floor, a sound carrying far into the dark. Ramirez couldn't shake the thought that with every step they took forward, they were stepping further into someone else's trap. And high above them, in the shadows of the rafters, unseen eyes tracked their every move. The squad had pushed deep into the husk of the factory, and the silence inside felt even heavier than the streets outside. Dust hung thick in the air, disturbed by every cautious step. Shafts of pale light filtered through cracks in the ceiling, cutting across the gloom in narrow beams that illuminated floating moats. Everything else was darkness, a labyrinth of rusted machinery, abandoned work tables, and collapsed scaffolding. Sergeant Cole raised a clenched fist, signaling the squad to halt. They dropped into position without hesitation, bodies pressed to cover, rifles sweeping arcs across the cavernous room. The sound that had haunted them outside, the faint metallic clink, had returned, echoing faintly like a drop of water falling into a vast cistern. The Marines froze. Even breathing seemed too loud. Cole scanned the rafters. The sound had been faint but deliberate. His instincts told him this was no accident of wind or settling steel. Someone was up there, watching, waiting, eyes sharp, he whispered, his voice almost lost in the void. Private Ramirez adjusted his helmet, sweat dripping down the back of his neck despite the cold. His hands trembled on the grip of his rifle. He had heard stories of snipers hiding in factories like this, high ground, endless shadows, perfect killing fields. Every second in the open felt like daring death to take a shot. Doyle muttered under his breath, "I don't like this." "None of us do," Hayes hissed back. "Shut it and focus." Cole ignored the whispers. He could feel the squad's nerves fraying, fear spreading through them like cracks in glass. It was his job to hold them together. He studied the floor ahead, broken pallets, coils of cable, barrels overturned in haphazard piles. All of it could conceal tripwires or hidden explosives. He gestured, and the point man crept forward, sweeping with his barrel. The rest followed, leapfrogging in tight formation. The sound came again. Metal on metal. This time sharper, closer. The Marines dropped low instantly, rifles snapping toward the shadows above. Their scopes cut across catwalks and broken stairwells, but nothing moved. The beams of light made the dark patches even blacker, swallowing detail. Ramirez's pulse thundered in his ears. He thought he saw movement, a figure slipping between the beams, but when he blinked, it was gone. His imagination was becoming a weapon against him. He bit his lip until he tasted blood, forcing himself to steady. "Where's the backup?" whispered one of the men from the rear, the question breaking the suffocating silence like a fragile thread snapping. Cole clenched his jaw. Backup wasn't coming. He had accepted that. But he couldn't let his men lose hope. Not yet. "Stay on me," he ordered, his voice firm, grounding them. They advanced deeper into the factory. Each footstep echoed against steel, bouncing far into the cavern until it felt like they were surrounded by ghosts. The factory's broken machines loomed like rusting monsters, conveyor belts tangled with years of debris. Old oil stains painted the floor like dark shadows. Hayes suddenly raised a fist. He crouched low, pointing to the ground. Their fresh footprints in the dust, heading toward the central stairwell. Cole's stomach dropped. The tracks were recent. Very recent. The Marines closed in, rifles trained upward. The stairwell rose into the shadows, its rails bent, steps coated in grime. Something about it felt wrong, like stepping into the throat of a predator. Then it happened. A clang. Louder this time, deliberate. Every Marine flinched, rifles jerking upward. The sound had come from the catwalk above, sharp and mocking. Whoever was up there wanted them to know it. "He's playing with us," Doyle breathed, voice cracking. "Quiet." Cole snapped, though he knew Doyle was right. This wasn't random. This was calculated. The enemy was baiting them, testing their nerves, pulling them deeper into his arena. Ramirez's breathing grew faster, ragged. The toy soldier he had seen earlier flashed in his mind, broken, discarded, and now he felt like that toy himself. Fragile. Exposed. He swallowed hard, trying to force the image away. Cole gestured. 2 Marines flanked left, 2 more right, while the rest covered from below. Slowly, methodically, they began to climb the stairs. Each step groaned under their weight, the sound amplified in the cavernous silence. The higher they climbed, the more suffocating the air became. The shadows seemed to thicken, pressing close, swallowing the edges of their vision. Ramirez was third in line. His eyes darted across the catwalk ahead, searching desperately for movement. His heart pounded so hard, he thought it would give him away. Then he heard it, a whisper of fabric against metal. He froze, finger tightening on the trigger. His eyes locked on a dark gap between 2 steel beams. For the briefest moment, he thought he saw a glint, a flash of glass reflecting light. "Contact," he hissed, pointing. But when the squad focused, the gap was empty. Nothing but shadow. Hayes swore under his breath. "He's out there. He's toying with us." Cole raised his fist, signaling silence. He scanned the beams, every muscle in his body tight as wire. He had been in ambushes before, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about killing. Whoever was up there was hunting them like prey, enjoying the fear. The squad reached the top of the stairwell. The catwalk creaked under their boots, flakes of rust falling into the darkness below. They crouched low, rifles sweeping the upper level. Nothing, just silence. Cole exhaled slowly, then whispered into his mic, even though he knew the radio was unreliable. "Alpha Squad, perimeter secure. Moving to sweep upper floor." Only static answered. The emptiness pressed in. The silence was no longer absence of sound. It was alive. A predator crouched in the dark. Ramirez felt the hair on the back of his neck rise. He wanted to scream, to fire into the shadows, to do anything to break the unbearable tension. But he held his ground, finger on the trigger, eyes scanning desperately. The squad inched forward. Every step on the catwalk groaned. Every shift of metal echoed. The sniper, if it was a sniper, remained unseen. But his presence was everywhere, filling their lungs with dread. Cole's instincts screamed at him. This was the calm before the storm. And when the first shot came, it would already be too late. The catwalk groaned beneath the squad's boots as they edged forward, rifles sweeping the upper levels. The silence pressed tighter, a weight on every chest. Dust floated like smoke in the air, disturbed only by their movements. Sergeant Cole's eyes darted from beam to beam, hunting for the glint of a scope, the twitch of a shadow. Nothing, but Cole knew better than to trust nothing. Nothing was often the camouflage of death. Then, without warning, the silence shattered. Crack! The first shot tore through the air like lightning. A deafening roar in the cavern of the factory. Ramirez saw the man in front of him jerk violently, his helmet spinning off as crimson sprayed the railing. The Marine's body crumpled instantly, his rifle clattering against the steel grating with a hollow clang that echoed into eternity. "Sniper!" Cole roared, his voice thunderous. The squad exploded into motion, diving for cover. Boots thundered against the catwalk as they scrambled behind beams and rusted machinery. Bullets followed, each shot precise, each one sparking against steel or punching into wood. The sound was deafening, a rhythm of death echoing through the factory. Ramirez slammed against the base of a support column, his chest heaving. His heart pounded so hard it drowned out the gunfire. He glanced at the fallen Marine still, lifeless, eyes wide open, and bile rose in his throat. He forced it down, gripping his rifle until his knuckles ached. The sniper fired again. Crack. Another round sparked inches from Hayes, showering him with fragments of rust. Hayes cursed, rolling tighter into cover. "He's up high!" Doyle shouted, his voice breaking. Catwalk level, northeast corner. Cole risked a glance. Through the haze of dust and the chaos of ricochets, he caught a flicker movement in the shadows above. The sniper was skilled, using darkness and elevation to his advantage. Each shot was measured, patient. This wasn't spray and pray. This was control. Cole pressed his radio, though he knew it was useless. "Alpha Squad under fire. Need backup now. Repeat sniper in the factory." Only static answered, mocking him. The words hissed again among the men, desperate and raw. "Where's the backup?" But backup wasn't coming. "Smoke out," Cole barked. Doyle yanked a canister from his vest, pulled the pin, and tossed it across the catwalk. The hiss of smoke filled the air, a thick white cloud billowing upward, cloaking them. For a moment, it gave them cover. But it also trapped them, blinding them as much as the sniper. Another shot cracked through the haze. A scream followed. One of the Marines staggered, clutching his leg as blood poured between his fingers. He collapsed hard, gasping in pain. "Medic," Cole barked. Ramirez moved without thinking, crawling low through the smoke to the wounded Marine. He pressed his hand hard against the wound, the warmth of blood soaking through his gloves. The Marine's eyes were wide with terror, his teeth gritted against the agony. "You're all right? You're all right," Ramirez muttered, though his own voice shook. Another shot tore through the cloud. The sound was so close Ramirez felt it rip the air past his ear. He froze, sweat dripping down his temple. The sniper wasn't just shooting blindly, he was tracking them, feeling their movements even in the smoke. Hayes returned fire, his rifle barking in controlled bursts toward the sniper's perch. Sparks rained from the steel beams, but there was no scream, no fall. The sniper was already moving, shifting positions with the skill of a phantom. Cole's jaw tightened. He's mobile. He's not holding one nest. He's hunting. The squad was pinned. The sniper dictated the rhythm of the battle, every shot forcing them tighter into cover, every movement a gamble with death. Ramirez dragged the wounded Marine toward heavier cover, bullets snapping overhead. He could feel the sniper's gaze, cold and merciless, tracking them like a hawk. His hands trembled, but he refused to stop. He pulled the Marine behind a support pillar, his chest heaving, his ears ringing from the gunfire. "Hold on," Ramirez whispered, pressing bandages into the wound. His voice cracked, but he kept working. The sniper fired again. Crack. The bullet struck the pillar inches from Ramirez's head, spraying him with concrete dust. He ducked lower, heart hammering so hard it hurt. "Where's the backup?" Doyle shouted, his voice rising with panic as another round sparked off the railing near him. "Forget the backup," Cole barked, fury in his voice. "We are the backup. Stay alive." The Marines obeyed, returning fire in desperate bursts, but it was like shooting at ghosts. The sniper was invisible, his shots coming from different angles, never staying still long enough for them to zero in. Hayes snarled, leaning out just enough to spray a burst at the catwalk across the factory. His bullets tore through metal and shattered glass, but the only answer was another single, precise shot. It struck so close Hayes felt the heat of the round skim past his cheek. He ducked back, teeth gritted, his breath ragged. "This guy's a damn ghost," he growled. Cole's mind raced. Panic was clawing at his men, eating their discipline. He needed to turn the tables, to force the sniper into a mistake. But how do you fight a shadow? The sniper fired again. Another Marine yelped, diving as the round grazed his shoulder. Blood sprayed against the rusted railing. The squad was bleeding, pinned, and the factory was a cage. Ramirez pressed tighter to the pillar, his hands slick with blood from the wounded Marine beside him. His chest rose and fell in ragged breaths. He could hear the whispers again, faint but undeniable. "Where's the backup?" It wasn't just a question anymore. It was despair, breaking through their discipline, eating away at their will. Cole's eyes narrowed. He forced his breathing to steady, his mind sharpening against the fear. Backup wasn't coming. The factory belonged to the sniper now. And if they didn't change the game, none of them would make it out alive. He leaned out just long enough to scan the rafters again. And there, just for a heartbeat, he saw it. A glint of glass, the faint shimmer of a scope reflecting light. Cole's teeth clenched. A sniper was real, flesh and blood, not a ghost. And that meant he could be killed. Marksman. Cole barked into the smoke. "Get eyes on that scope. Northeast rafters. I want him flushed out." The squad shifted, rifles snapping toward the indicated corner. The sniper had revealed himself, if only for a second. And Cole would make sure that second was the beginning of his end. But as he shouted orders, another shot cracked, louder than thunder, and another Marine dropped. The smoke clung thick around the catwalks, curling into every corner like a living thing. Marines crouched low, their rifles trembling in hands slick with sweat. The sniper's last shot still echoed, bouncing off walls, rattling their bones. Another man was down second tier, third wounded. The factory smelled of blood, oil, and gunpowder. Ramirez pressed against the pillar, his gloves crimson from the wounded Marine he had dragged to safety. The man groaned, clutching his bandaged leg, the pain etched across his pale face. Ramirez whispered to him, steady but strained, "Stay with me. Just stay with me," but his own heart hammered like a drum. He felt the sniper's eyes even in the smoke, cold, calculating, patient, then crack, another shot. The sound was distant this time, from the far side of the factory. The bullet screamed past haze and shattered a hanging light fixture. Glass rained down in tiny shards that sparkled like ice in the dim light. He moved, Hayes growled, pressing his back harder against the steel beam. "The bastards everywhere." "Negative," Cole snapped. "One shooter?" "He's repositioning after every shot." The squad leader's voice was steel, but his eyes betrayed the truth. The sniper wasn't just firing at them. He was playing with them, keeping them pinned, isolating them, testing their nerves. Ramirez swallowed hard. The thought gnawed at him. This wasn't chaos. It was precision. Every shot was designed, not just to wound or kill, but to break their rhythm, to fracture their confidence. The whispers started again. Quiet, broken, carried in the smoke. "Where's the backup?" Cole heard it. His jaw clenched so hard it ached. "Forget the backup." Eyes sharp. "That scope glint was real. He's human, and he bleeds. We just need to force him into the open." But the men weren't convinced. The sniper's presence was like a ghost wrapping icy fingers around their throats. Crack. Another. Round punched through the metal railing where Doyle crouched. He flinched, nearly dropping his rifle. The shot hadn't hit him. It hadn't even been meant to. It was a warning, a whisper of death grazing by. The sniper was letting him know, "I could have killed you." Doyle's breath hitched. "He's toying with us," he muttered, eyes wide. "Like a damn cat with mice." Cole's voice cut through. "Shut it down. Keep your heads. He wants us spooked, that's his weapon." But even Cole could feel it, the creeping terror that spread like a disease. This wasn't a firefight. This was psychological warfare. Ramirez risked a glance through the haze. The factory was vast, multiple catwalks, rafters, rusted tanks, dark windows shattered years ago. Shadows layered upon shadows. Perfect hunting ground for a marksman. His skin prickled. The sniper could be anywhere. Could already be watching him through the crosshairs. And then another shot. Crack. It struck the floor inches from the wounded Marine Ramirez was tending. Concrete splintered, sending fragments into his face. The man screamed, twisting, blood and dust mixing on his skin. Ramirez threw himself over him, shielding him, heart in his throat. "Medic!" Cole barked, but Ramirez already had his hands pressed firm, whispering fiercely to the wounded Marine, "You're not dying here. Not today." The sniper had not missed. He chose not to kill. Hayes spat, fury burning through his fear. "He's painting us. He knows we're stuck, and he's narking targets at will." Cole's mind worked like a machine under pressure. The sniper wasn't just killing Marines. He was dismantling their morale, one bullet at a time. The cries for backup had grown softer now, more desperate, like a prayer nobody expected answered. Then, through the chaos, a realization struck Cole. "He's controlling the tempo," Cole muttered, almost to himself. "He fires, we flinch. He moves, we freeze. He's making us dance." The squad glanced at him, wide-eyed. "So we changed the tempo," Cole said, voice hardening. "How?" Hayes asked, desperation sharp in his tone. Cole's mind flashed back to training, to every lesson drilled into him. An enemy sniper controls until forced into exposure. We smoke, we suppress, we bait him. He's one man. He can't own this entire factory forever. The Marines nodded, but the fear was still there, gnawing. Crack. Another round. This one shattered a steel beam above their heads, showering sparks and dust. No hit, just pressure. Ramirez felt his stomach twist. This wasn't just shooting. This was art. Whoever was up there wasn't some desperate insurgent with a rifle. He was trained, disciplined, ruthless. "Where's the backup?" The whisper came again, this time from Doyle. His eyes were glassy, his voice trembling. Cole spun on him, fury snapping. "Backup isn't coming. We are the line. We end this, or we die here. Those are your choices." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the hiss of the smoke grenades burning low. The factory's shadows seemed to breathe, to close tighter around them. Ramirez adjusted the bandages, his hands shaking less now. Something in Cole's words settled inside him, not comfort, but resolve. They were trapped, but they weren't powerless. Then, movement. Ramirez caught it just a flicker. A shadow sliding between beams. He blinked, rubbed his eyes against the dust, and saw nothing. But the hair on his neck rose. The sniper was shifting again, watching, waiting. Cole noticed too. He raised a fist, signaling silence. The squad froze, weapons ready, breaths shallow. The factory groaned in the wind. Chains clinked softly, swaying. Dust cascaded from above like faint rain. And then another shot. Crack. This time, it wasn't random. It wasn't a graze. The round punched clean through Doyle's chest. His body convulsed, his rifle clattering as he collapsed onto the catwalk. The scream that followed was raw, tearing through the squad like a knife. Ramirez's eyes went wide, his stomach lurching. Doyle gasped, blood bubbling from his lips, hands clawing for air that wouldn't come. The sound tore into every man's heart. The sniper had spoken. Not with words, but with a single merciless round. Cole's face hardened into stone. The invisible enemy had drawn blood again, and the game was far from over. Doyle's death hung over the squad like smoke that wouldn't clear. His body twitched once, then stilled, eyes fixed in a glassy stare toward the high beams. The blood pooled beneath him, soaking into the rust-stained steel. No one dared move to close his eyes. Not yet. Ramirez's stomach churned. He wanted to crawl over, to grab Doyle, to drag him to safety as he had with the others. But there was no safety left. Not for Doyle, not for anyone unless they broke this chokehold. Cole's jaw was iron, his breathing steady but sharp. He knelt behind a beam, eyes locked on the rafters where he thought the shot had come from. The sniper had made a mistake, not in killing Doyle, but in choosing to kill when his power lay in restraint. That single bullet had shifted something. It had shown discipline, yes, but also exposure. For just a fraction of a second, the man had to reveal himself. And fractions were all Cole needed. "Marksman," Cole hissed, calling Hayes by his role. "Scope ready. On my mark, you look high northeast." Hayes nodded, wiping the sweat from his brow. His hands trembled as he raised his rifle, peering through the optic. "Smoke again," Cole ordered. Ramirez pulled another canister from his vest, yanked the pin, and rolled it across the catwalk. The hiss filled the air, white plumes boiling upward. The factory became a maze of shifting haze, shadows growing thicker, every corner alive with menace. The sniper didn't fire. That silence was louder than any gunshot. "He's watching," Hayes whispered, his voice strained. "He knows we're trying something." Cole's eyes narrowed. "Good. Let him watch." The smoke curled higher, drifting toward the rafters. For a brief moment, light cut through it a shaft from a broken skylight above. And in that light, just barely, a silhouette shifted. "There," Hayes breathed. The shape was faint like a phantom, crouched on the rafters, rifle poised. The angle was clever, masked by beams and shadow, but the sunlight betrayed a glint. A reflection, glass, scope. Hayes's finger tightened on the trigger. "I've got him, crack." The sniper fired first. Hayes's scope shattered. He reeled back with a curse, shards of glass cutting into his face. The round had missed his skull by an inch. An inch. Damn it. Hayes snarled, clutching his cheek, blood running down his jaw. But the shot had given them what they needed. For the first time, the squad saw him. The sniper wasn't a ghost. He was a man. Ramirez glimpsed him through the haze, a dark figure crouched low on the steel beams, draped in a ragged cloak that blended with the rust and dust. His rifle was long, modified, the barrel wrapped in cloth to dull the shine. His movements were precise, almost reptilian, cold, deliberate, but his face, just for a second, Ramirez saw it. Pale skin streaked with grime, eyes narrowed through the scope, mouth set in grim concentration. Human, flesh and blood, not a phantom, not a ghost. The realization rippled through the squad. Fear didn't vanish, but it shifted, hardened into something else. Rage, resolve. "He bleeds," Cole growled. "He bleeds like any other man." Hayes, still wiping blood from his cheek, spat onto the floor. "Then let's make him bleed." The squad rallied, their weapons turning upward. Bursts of fire erupted, sparking against steel, ripping through the rafters. Dust rained down in choking clouds. The sniper shifted again, sliding deeper into the shadows, but now every Marine tracked him. The illusion of omnipotence was broken. Still, he wasn't done. Crack! Another shot ripped through the haze, striking the edge of a catwalk near Ramirez. Metal screeched, sparks cascading into the darkness. The Marines ducked low, returning fire blindly. But Ramirez noticed something. The sniper wasn't firing as calmly anymore. The shot had been rushed, a little off. Seeing him had changed the game for both sides. "He's rattled," Ramirez muttered under his breath. Cole heard it. "Good. Keep him rattled. Don't let him breathe." The squad fired again, volleys of gunfire shaking the factory walls. Bullets tore into beams, ricocheting wildly, but each shot drove the sniper further back, forced him to shift. He couldn't dominate them from the shadows anymore, not without risking another glimpse. Then, in the brief lull between bursts, Ramirez caught it again. Movement. The sniper darted across a beam, cloak trailing behind him. Quick, agile, but visible. "There!" Ramirez shouted, pointing. Every Marine fired. Rounds peppered the rafters, sparks raining like fireworks. The sniper twisted, rolling behind a column, vanishing again. But this time, not unscathed. A faint smear of red streaked the steel. Ramirez's chest tightened. Blood. They had hit him. The squad erupted in a chorus of shouts, their voices fierce, defiant. The fear wasn't gone. It never would be, but it had been cut with hope. The sniper could bleed, and if he could bleed, he could die. Cole raised his rifle, voice booming above the gunfire. "You're not untouchable anymore, you son of a bitch." The sniper didn't answer with words. He answered with another shot. Crack. The bullet slammed into the ground between Cole's boots, throwing up chips of concrete. A deliberate miss. A warning. Cole froze, then sneered. "Yeah? Warn all you want. We've got your scent now." The squad repositioned, spreading out to cover more angles. The sniper had lost the veil of invisibility. He could still kill, still terrify, but his shadow was fractured. He wasn't an unseen phantom anymore. He was a man in the rafters, bleeding, trapped with them in this factory of ghosts. Ramirez glanced at the wounded Marine beside him, still alive, still breathing, and then at Doyle's body on the catwalk. His gut twisted, but his hand steadied on his rifle. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was payback. The sniper had revealed himself. And now, the hunt was no longer one-sided. The factory seemed alive now, its walls echoing with gunfire, ricochets, and the harsh shouts of men fighting for their lives. Every steel beam and broken catwalk rattled under the volley of bullets. Sparks flew as rounds hit metal, showering the room in dangerous fragments. Dust and smoke twisted together, choking vision, but Cole's eyes never wavered. He knew the sniper was near. He could feel it, a heartbeat in the shadows, measuring theirs. Form a line. Cole barked. Suppress him. Make him move. The squad obeyed instantly. Bursts of fire erupted toward the upper rafters, where the sniper had been glimpsed. The bullets tore into steel, shipping flakes into the air, and somewhere above, the sniper shifted. Ramirez crouched low behind a rusted support column, heart hammering. He had never fired so desperately in his life, yet every shot was aimed, every breath controlled. He had seen Doyle fall. He had heard the screams of the wounded. Fear still clawed at him, but it was tempered now by rage. Another shot rang out. Crack. The sniper's round struck a catwalk beam inches from Hayes, sending sparks cascading around him. Hayes yelped, but rolled to safety, returning fire in controlled bursts. His face was streaked with blood and grime, eyes narrowed with focus. "He's trying to split us up," Hayes shouted, scanning for movement. Cole saw it too. The sniper's strategy was evolving, keep them separated, isolate individuals, force mistakes. He signaled to Ramirez. "Cover the flank. Don't let him get a clean shot at anyone else." Ramirez slid along the column, moving to a higher position, rifle ready. Every nerve screamed at him to freeze, but he advanced with careful steps. The sniper fired again. Ramirez flinched as the round shattered a steel beam beside him, showering sparks. The smell of burnt metal and smoke burned his nostrils. Then Cole acted. He fired a single shot at the nearest shadow above, forcing the sniper to shift once more. That movement revealed him, just for a second, a crouched figure on the rafters, face obscured by grime and shadow, rifle trained on the Marines below. Now, Cole roared. The squad erupted in a synchronized volley. Bullets tore toward the sniper's position, kicking up debris and dust. He twisted, rolling behind a column, but not without consequence. Sparks flew, and a red streak appeared across his arm. He hissed but did not fall. The duel was on. Every Marine now moved like part of a machine, each covering the other, coordinated despite exhaustion and fear. Smoke clouds swirled, giving them partial concealment, but the sniper's movements were precise, fluid, almost predatory. Each time he exposed himself, he risked injury, yet he calculated it perfectly. Ramirez found himself pinned against a steel beam as another round zipped past, ricocheting dangerously. He returned fire instinctively, tracking the faint glint of the scope. The sniper twisted, avoiding most bullets, but a few found the metal beam near him, shaking it violently. Sparks rained down. Ramirez felt the heat and adrenaline mix in his veins, sharpening every sense. "Move," Cole ordered. "Push him into the open. Don't let him vanish again." The Marines advanced carefully, using smoke and cover to corner the sniper. He shifted positions, trying to escape, but each move was met with coordinated fire. He was skilled, yes, but now under pressure. The factory that had been his domain was shrinking with every step they took. The sniper fired again, taking out another support column's loose pipe. The clang echoed, masking the cries of the wounded. Ramirez's hands shook, but he steadied, pressing the rifle against his shoulder. He had one shot, one chance. Cole saw the opening too. He signaled with his fist. Hayes fired simultaneously. Ramirez squeezed the trigger. The sniper rolled, but this time the shot hit, ripping through the lower part of his cloak, splattering red across steel. He hissed, twisting sharply, his arm nicked by another round. Pain flared across his body. The Marines pressed forward. "Keep firing," Cole yelled. "Do not let him disappear." The sniper twisted again, trying to find a new angle. But now, every move was predictable. The Marines had adapted to his rhythm, and the fear that had controlled them earlier had been replaced by focused determination. Ramirez fired again, hitting a beam near the sniper's feet. Sparks flew, forcing the sniper to jump back. Hayes moved in tandem, pushing fire upward, while Cole circled below, preparing to flank. The sniper's eyes narrowed. He realized he was trapped. This wasn't a hunt anymore, it was a stand. He fired again, but desperation tinged his shot. The round hit the floor and ricocheted harmlessly. Ramirez didn't hesitate. He aimed, fired, and this time the bullet struck the sniper's shoulder. He yelped, stumbling, gripping the wound. Blood streaked his arm, vivid against the grime and shadow. "Got him!" Ramirez shouted, adrenaline surging. Cole pressed forward. "Finish it. Stay sharp." The sniper scrambled to a higher catwalk, trying to gain distance, but the Marines' coordination didn't falter. Smoke, gunfire, and shouted orders forced him into cover, but he was wounded, slowing him. Hayes fired again, bullets grazing his cloak. Sparks and red streaks marked his path. For a moment, the factory was chaos incarnate: gunfire, dust, blood, and the smell of smoke and metal filling the air. And then Cole saw it. The sniper was cornered. One last move, one final choice. Ramirez raised his rifle, heart hammering, and fired. The round hit cleanly this time, striking the sniper's side. He stumbled, slumping against a steel column. Blood spread rapidly, dripping onto the catwalk below. Silence followed, punctuated only by heavy breathing and distant groans of the wounded. The Marines lowered their rifles cautiously. The sniper was no longer a ghost. He was human, mortal, broken. Cole approached carefully, weapon raised. The sniper's eyes met his, filled with defiance, but also fear. For the first time, the factory didn't feel alive with dread. It felt like victory, but heavy, costly, and fleeting. Ramirez knelt near the sniper, checking for further movement. The man's rifle lay across his chest, useless now. The duel was over. Cole exhaled, relief tempered by the knowledge that this was only part of the battle. They had survived the invisible predator, outsmarted him, and forced him into exposure. But the cost had been high. 2 Marines dead, another wounded, and all of them shaken to their core. Still, the sniper had revealed a truth. Fear could be fought. Shadows could be confronted. And even the most deadly hunter could be trapped if a team acted as one, without hesitation, without surrendering to terror. Ramirez looked around at his squad faces streaked with grime, blood, and exhaustion. They had endured the nightmare together. They had survived the deadly duel. And for the first time, the factory felt quieter, not empty, not safe, but theirs, if only for a moment. The factory was silent, but it was a heavy, oppressive silence, the kind that presses down on your chest, demanding acknowledgement of everything that had just occurred. Broken beams and shattered glass littered the floor. Smoke curled lazily from the spent grenades, and the acrid scent of gunfire and blood clung to every surface. Cole lowered his rifle, chest heaving, eyes scanning the upper rafters one last time. The sniper slumped against the steel column, blood seeping into the rusted floor below. He had survived, barely, but incapacitated. Mortal. The squad gathered slowly, faces etched with exhaustion and disbelief. Ramirez knelt beside Doyle's body, pressing a hand against his chest, even though he knew there was no pulse. His stomach twisted, bile rising, but he swallowed hard, forcing himself to focus. Doyle's sacrifice had been part of the cost of survival, a price none of them had wanted to pay. Hayes leaned against a wall, shaking his head, wiping blood and sweat from his brow. His hands still trembled, though he gripped his rifle as though it were a lifeline. We made it, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Somehow. Made it? Cole echoed, his tone flat. 2 gone, 1 seriously wounded. And for what? Surviving doesn't mean winning. We're lucky we even have a chance to breathe right now. Ramirez looked at him, his eyes red, body tense. We faced him, Cole. We forced him into the open. Cole cut him off with a sharp gesture. Yes, we did. But don't mistake survival for victory. This factory, this place, it owns part of us now. That fear, that chaos, that doesn't leave just because the sniper can't shoot anymore. The squad moved cautiously toward their fallen comrades, dragging the wounded Marine to safer cover. The man groaned, wincing, but alive. Ramirez pressed bandages firmly, whispering reassurances, though his own heart still raced. Doyle's body was retrieved last. Ramirez gently laid him on a pallet, closing his eyes. The silence pressed in on them, broken only by the faint groan of steel settling, the creak of hanging rafters. Cole walked toward the center of the factory floor, scanning the walls and shadows. Once, this had been an industrial hub, a place of labor and noise. Now it was a battlefield, a tomb of metal and dust. He could feel the weight of the building pressing down, a silent witness to what had transpired. Ramirez finally lowered himself beside him. We did what we had to, he said, voice trembling. Cole shook his head slowly. We survived. That's all. Remember that. Everything else. Everything else is noise. For a moment, they sat in the silence, the air thick with dust and smoke. Ramirez glanced at the sniper, who was slumped against the steel column, groaning softly. He was alive, but broken, his rifle useless. Even in defeat, he radiated menace, a reminder of the danger that had stalked them relentlessly. The factory felt empty now, but it wasn't. Not really. Shadows lingered in corners, whispered reminders of every shot fired, every life lost, every scream that had echoed through the cavernous space. Ramirez swallowed hard. It was a place that would never forget them, and they would never forget it. Cole called for the squad to regroup. They formed a loose circle, surveying their numbers. 2 lost, 1 wounded, 1 sniper incapacitated. Exhaustion draped over them like a heavy cloak, but each man stood as best he could. "We move," Cole said finally. "We leave this place behind. But remember what we learned. Fear is part of this fight, but it's not the fight itself. We control what we can. We survive what we must. And we remember who paid the price." Ramirez looked at Doyle one last time, then up at the high rafters. "He was something else," he muttered. "I've never been that scared in my life." Cole's eyes hardened. "And you never want to be. But you also never want to forget what it felt like. That's how you stay alive next time. That's how we all stay alive." The wounded Marine groaned again. Ramirez adjusted his bandages and helped him to his feet. Hayes and Doyle's spotters gathered their remaining equipment, weapons still loaded, hands still trembling slightly. The factory's broken windows let in shafts of late afternoon light. Dust motes drifted lazily in the glow, as if the building were sighing after the storm. Every beam, every shadow, now seemed like a scar etched into memory. Cole finally signaled to move out. One by one, the Marines stepped cautiously toward the exit. Their boots crunched over broken glass and rusted metal. The sniper remained behind, slumped against his column, a living reminder of the terror that had stalked them. Ramirez took one last glance at him. "He's not the end," he whispered. "Not really. He's just proof." Cole didn't respond. He simply kept walking, leading his men toward daylight, toward a chance at normalcy, toward a life that seemed distant and fragile after the horrors inside. As they exited the factory, the wind hit their faces, carrying dust and the faint smell of smoke. For a brief moment, they breathed freely, the sounds of the outside world filling their ears' cars, distant voices, the hum of life continuing without them. But they all knew the truth. The factory would follow them. In dreams, in memory, in the way the shadows lingered behind their eyes. Ramirez's hand went to his rifle automatically, muscle memory. He glanced at Cole. "We did it," he said quietly. Cole finally allowed a small nod. "For now," he replied. "For now we did. But remember this. Every fight leaves something behind. Fear, loss, ghosts. You carry them whether you want to or not. The trick is not letting them break you." The Marines walked in silence after that, each lost in his own thoughts, each haunted in his own way. They had survived the sniper, outsmarted him, endured the terror of the factory, but the memory of every shot, every scream, every heartbeat in that hellish maze would stay with them forever. And in the shadows of the abandoned factory, the sniper stirred. Wounded, defeated, but alive. His eyes scanned the empty rafters, calculating, learning, waiting. He was human, mortal, but the game had not ended. Yet for the Marines walking into the dying light, the moment was theirs. They had faced the invisible enemy, endured the deadly duel, and emerged not unscathed, but unbroken. The factory stood silent behind them, a monument to fear, courage, and survival. And as they disappeared into the afternoon sun, its shadows lingered, heavy and patient, waiting for the next story, the next confrontation, the next ghost.